individuals are mentally preoccupied, fatigued, or disengaged, the likelihood of errors and safety incidents increases. Overlife is seen as someone who's weak, and because of that, it's going to impact my career progressions. An estimated 85% of employees have a well-being strategy in place, and that's an increase of 30% since 2020. So that said, now we are observing a level of awareness which has increased faster than capability. So many organizations recognize the importance of mental well-being, but leaders themselves may not feel fully equipped to respond when employees are struggling.
I'm looking at the trends. In 2021, pandemic uncertainty. 2022, work-life balance. 2023, heavy workload. 2024, cost of living. 2025, burnout. What do you think is happening now in 2025 to 2026 that leaders need to jump onto right now? Hi, everybody. Welcome to the OSH Insights podcast, tailored to the safety professionals in Asia. This podcast is focused on highlighting the trends and challenging the status quo for a better and safer workforce. Now, so far, we've looked at topics like safety trends in Asia, best practices for safety professionals, the correlation between heat, resilience, and performance. In this episode, however, we're taking a slightly different direction. We're looking at mental health, specifically psychosocial support in the workforce. To tell us a little bit more about what organizations are currently doing and what perhaps they should provide, we've invited a specialist in this field. That is Miss Durga Naidu. She's the head from the Singapore Red Cross Academy to give us her OSH insights. Before we get to the podcast, I've got a short message to share. The region's leading exhibition for all aspects of safety, security, and health at work, Occupational Safety and Health Asia 2026 will be held from the 9th to 11th September 2026 in Hall C, Marina Bay Sands Expo. Visitor registration opens in April 2026, so meanwhile, head to osha-singapore.com and subscribe to our e-newsletter to get the latest updates and exhibition highlights. And now, onto the podcast. So you're with the Singapore Red Cross Academy, right? Most of us know the Red Cross is a society of some sorts, right? Doing humanitarian aid.
Yeah.
How is that different? And maybe you can simplify this for me. What does the Red Cross Academy do?
Okay, so for Singapore Red Cross, the mission is overall to, international humanitarian missions and community missions as well. However, Singapore Red Cross Academy, we're a holistic approach to making sure that the courses are in place. What is necessary for the community, society, or even internationally and locally as well. So the courses range as far as from first aid resuscitation. So we have the CPR, we got the AED, we got the child first aid. And also now recently we have this pets first aid course.
Wow.
Apart from that, we got the psychosocial resilience. So psychological first aid, it goes back as far as 2016 when we kicked off, with this training, mental health trainings. And we ranged it towards advanced psychological first aid. And now we also have the group psychological first aid. Let's say there's a safety lapse. Maybe not only one person is affected or one worker is affected, but it's probably in a group setting. And how do we do group psychological first aid? Our deployment of trainers are mainly on now targeting and going towards to tackle organizations to handle in this.
Right. I mean, it's very interesting to see that, from the humanitarian aid side, is what we know Singapore Red Cross to be. And now we've got the Red Cross Academy, which provides training, like what you said, CPR, and now it's gone into psychosocial support. Give me a quick background on that. Why do you think that, from the Red Cross point of view, there was a need for this in the first place?
We realized that people may not be able to understand a trauma they're going through. And Red Cross feels that it's our due diligence to ensure that we attend to the community, to everyone, and make sure that the psychosocial support is mandatorily placed in our organization to give the support to everyone and anyone. We saw the importance of mental health. So, of course, CPR, AED, first aid trainings, all was like physically, how you're going to attend to another person. But when you're attending also, there's a mental health component we need to attend to. And sometimes there are family members standing around and they panic, and how do you address to that? And I'm very happy that, Singapore Red Cross had already psychosocial element brought up, and we started doing the trainings for many corporates and many people in the community.
That's really interesting because, again, from the community to the organizations, it's very important to have more of a 360 approach whereby we can care, we can take care, we can not just prevent, but we can also, I would say manage if something does happen. Now, you've mentioned things like COVID. That was a very trying time for everybody. Now, it was a very big thing in the world and what was very interesting there was loneliness, isolation was the big issue, and like, so tell me a little bit more about that when that case came up or this bout of cases came up. What was the Red Cross's or Red Cross Academy's stand, and also what were the actions taken? What about workers per se? What were they going through this period?
Yeah, I agree. And, workers, when we say it, we can also talk about those, in the safety line where, let's say those workers who stay in the dormitories.
They were displaced, basically.
Yeah, it is not easy for them as well. Imagine a living space of certain dormitories 1:10 or certain dormitory max to 1:20. Policies kicked in and said that, we need to isolate you when you've already tested C+, and you're moved to a different shelter per se. It truly took a toll on them. And Red Cross was also making sure to let them know, we are there for you, and whatever resources you need to go back home. We'll be able to help you with your expectation once, you are cleared of COVID and all. And maybe I can also touch, after COVID, how mental health was brought into the mainstream topic in workplace conversations. So there has been definitely an increase in awareness, I would say. People are more open, and organizations have since also introduced flexible work arrangements very recently, the FWA, and well-being programs. In a way, COVID functioned much like a catalyst for mental health awareness. Because I wouldn't say we are going back to our old ways any longer, because therein lies the fact that organizations are more aware of mental health. Maybe I can go back to this research by Aon from 2022-2023, the Global Wellbeing Survey. It reveals that investment in well-being survey has risen in APAC at least by 27% since 2020, the fastest increase of any region. And an estimated 85% of employees have a well-being strategy in place, and that's an increase of 30% since 2020. So that said, now we are observing a level of awareness which has increased faster than capability. So many organizations recognize the importance of mental well-being, but leaders themselves may not feel fully equipped to respond when employees are struggling.
Wow, the demand is higher than the supply.
And with that said, we build at Red Cross, Singapore Red Cross Academy, we build capacity and equip leaders and employees alike with practical skills to recognize and respond to psychosocial distress.
Oh, it's very interesting. Now that you're able to now equip the leaders of, be it frontline managers or even at the top tier leadership, right? I would assume that also covers organizational psychosocial support as well on a wider range. For example, do you also look into areas of policy, if that's the case?
Yes.
I mean, within the organization,
Yeah, we do. So we ensure that firstly, we are aligned with the World Mental Health Organization's, level of where we are heading to in terms of, policies, because it's important that every organization is well equipped with the right personnel. Even in our own organization, Red Cross, we have like a peer-to-peer kind of support group. And this is something we are also trying to strengthen within other organizations and putting forward as well, making sure that you're trained in psychological first aid, but you need to have a support group as well. And these are the support group people you can go to, apart from, your day-to-day HRs.
Yeah. It's like how a therapist cannot, do it for yourself. You can't self-diagnose, right? In that sense. Right. So that's where the importance of the peer support group is there. Now, from COVID, things have changed a little bit. And what's interesting here is that work from home, flexible work hours, so like what you mentioned, were all the normal, new normal at the time. Well, it's 2026. So the new normal is now normal. So what do you think the new normal is going to be? Because I'm looking at the trends, right? And this was the from the TELUS Mental Health Index, Employment, Hero Wellness at Work, and AXA Mind Health Studies consolidated, thanks to Gemini, of course, and all our AI tools that we use, made it easy for everyone. Now, from the year of COVID, there was pandemic uncertainty. These were the top stressors, right, that were handled, that were managed. Top stressor in 2021 was pandemic uncertainty. Top stressor in 2022 was work-life balance. Top stressor in 2023 was a heavy workload because of the work-life balance.
Yeah.
You felt languished now that, I'm not used to the pace of things again because things were bouncing back. 2024 became cost of living that went up. Financial stress was increased. And 2025 was a constant stress because of burnout.
Burnout, yeah.
So, I mean, these are things that you've definitely seen, and year on year, you keep having to adapt and grow your capacities, right? In that sense. What do you think is happening now in 2025 to 2026 that the Red Cross Academy is looking into that leaders need to jump onto right now?
I would say not only from 2025 to 2026 where these problems have arisen, especially the stigma, the stigmatizations, and when you bring up a topic on mental health.
Yeah, when you said trauma, I was like, most of us of a certain age are going, trauma, that's called a bruise, it's not trauma.
Yeah, exactly. And even maybe I would say for my generation also, we will say that, but actually because we didn't really see the back end on, actually it was a trauma or it is a stressor which is, creating you to behave in a certain manner, but you just think that, I just brush it off because you got day to day to
walk it off.
Walk it off. But no, it's no longer that because now there's more exposure to mental health awareness. There's a lot of TED talks and a lot of exposure, and of course the industry of media. More people are aware on what it is, but stigma still it's there. The stigma is there and stereotyping people. And this is where I think Singapore Red Cross are also looking forward to, from 2025, 2026, even 2027, how, workers or staffs can openly come and, speak about, and how we're going to strengthen this part in other organizations. How do we go past this whole stigmatization? So staff or workers or an organization, they're certainly more informed on mental health wellness in the workplace. However, as I mentioned, stigma still exists. And while everybody understands, or maybe majority understands the concept of this mental health, they still hesitate to talk about it because of the concerns that how they're going to be perceived here. So one crucial thing here is to address, at least Red Cross will be doing, is on psychological safety. Do I really feel safe enough to actually express my vulnerability without the fear of being judged? This is something which is very important actually, especially at the workplace I'm referring to. Or will I be seen as someone who's weak? And because of that, it's going to impact my career progressions. Since I score low in grit or resilience, when it comes to, showing up somewhere, or maybe when you're ranking exercise, you feel that, all this are brought up because I already shared with you on my mental health situations on what I'm facing. But here we are talking about speak about your mental health or what problems or what stressor you're facing. We are speaking so much. And then when it comes to, let's say, a ranking exercise or appraisals, and organizations are not able to, they are linking it and say, you know what, maybe you need a bit more, time, and promotions are disturbed. So you see, the stigma today isn't always about people not understanding mental health, but it's about people not feeling safe enough. That's the main thing.
I see. That's very interesting because, like when you bring this up, like from the perspective of an employer, I mean, let me know if I'm oversimplifying this, right? Which is, if I see a staff, like say staff A and staff B, or employee A and employee B, both of them are equal on merit. They work equally hard, they work the same number of hours, they have the same number of achievements. But the difference of one is that one always says, not a problem. I can do it. It's okay. The other one is going, I'm not really feeling it today, but I'll still do it. I just wanted to share this with you that, I'm this and that. So it's based on that perception, is that why there's that fear of actually speaking up? Because I'll be judged for not being strong enough.
Certainly, I would say that it could be the contributing factor because there is no psychological safety here because employees need to feel safe. Maybe I'll quote one of the quotes that, which I was speaking of earlier, by Dr. Amy Edmondson. She said this: psychological safety is not about being nice. I can be a nice leader. It's about being able to show up for yourself, share your thoughts, and take risk without fear of negative consequences. This quote actually encapsulates the essence of creating an environment where individuals feel safe to express themselves and engage openly. And, you just mentioned about staff A and staff C. So one person is able to, is encouraged to speak about, I can do this, but these are the limitations. And another staff is able to say, it's okay. I can get it done. So eventually the merit goes to the person who doesn't give you a problem in per se. But aren't we talking about advocacy on mental health, the importance of mental health at workplaces and organizations? So why are we limiting, just because you showed me a problem and I'm not going to give you a better rank? No, it must be really based on what is your achievements rather than, you bringing up your struggles, because I think organizations or workplaces must be encouraging this if they want to better progress and, continue growth of the organization.
Okay, that is a very interesting point, because I really think that we are going down the rabbit hole on this, which is exactly what the podcast is for, right? Because if you think about it, right, employers, if they want, or organizations need to hit those targets, it's still for profit. It's still driven in that way. At the pace that we run, we can't afford to slow down based on so-called alleged problems, right? Or just because you don't feel it. I got to go with the person who can do the job, right? Not the person who tells me you can do the job, but. So I understand therein lies the problem, which is, again, a point that is super interesting. And employers, I think all around the world are, racking their brains about this, because the pros and cons are there, right? And I'd like to tap on your expertise for this. The pros seem to be a very myopic, short-sighted thing, which is we're going to get the job done. We're going to be, hit those targets. We're going to hit those milestones because A, you said you can do it. B, I have less of a problem to deal with. But what is the long-term damage to the organization if they continue this way?
Should they be continuing this way? Even if the staff is a good staff who's able to perform at the job given, overall a person that who has a mindset for the structured growth, they will leave. And or there will be, you're talking about presentism. So,
What's that?
Yeah, and
presentism?
Presentism, we hear a lot about absenteeism, right? So absenteeism is about, you are taking MCs and medical leave and you're not resting at home because you got, other level of stress going on. But presentism is, I'm actually present at work. I'm there. I am merely sitting there in my office. However, I'm not present in my mind. I am not actually working on the task given, but I'm present. So that's what it leads to, because I'm not going to be absent because, I need to be here. But then I'm not able to perform any further. That's why it's presentism. Actually, presentism is more of a risk than absenteeism. Because absenteeism, okay, this staff A is not here, and then I'm going to get somebody to cover your role for the day or the week or per se. However, presentism is even more fearful. It's more fierce actually, because you are there. You think, the staff is able to perform, but you can't. But why all this happens? Because if the organization is not able to give the support and tell you that it's okay that you're feeling this way, it's okay for you to express yourself on how you're feeling in terms of mental health, and it's okay for us to be giving you the right training or skill set. If we are not going to be open as an organization, then you will be looking forward to more presentism stuffs than absent stuffs.
That is true. It's very interesting that we said that. Now, there's one more thing that I just want to circle back to this, which piqued my interest. You mentioned that there are still stereotypes that are circulating around the workforce. What are these stereotypes that we should be able to become aware of, that perhaps frontline leaders or even business leaders should understand within their organizations, that we got to be aware of these things, that this shouldn't be the case? What are these stereotypes that are floating around?
The stereotypes of many a times, if a staff is not able to, or a worker, or they are not able to perform, the stereotype, it happens that, it's just a lazy staff. The staff is not able to perform because he just don't want to do the work. He's just here to, just come and waste the time and all. But then no one has actually intervened to understand what happened to this staff who was actually maybe eventually performing. And or maybe talking about our mental health is just an excuse used by someone. It's very funny and it's very strange, because even now in this era, we are talking about mental health is just a taboo. People are just using it to escape the real reality. But no, then why are we encouraging so much of mental health? Because it's not a taboo anymore. It is as equally important as taking care of your physical health. So I think firstly, organizations should be actually putting it off and say that you cannot call mental health to be a taboo. And if the person is not feeling it, he is not feeling it. Do not come up with terms on the person, lazy, not motivated. Because Eventually, as I mentioned just now, presentism, it all happens from here. And you are actually making a staff lose his motivation or her motivation to be even there anymore. But if you keep, putting terms on this person, you're giving this stereotypical, pictures, and why would they be there for you longer? And putting the effort to grow your organization. So leaders actually have the main role here to, they must be, strong on this belief, and also they should be making sure their front level managers are equipped to, handle the teams and staffs.
Okay. Now, what's interesting here is that we've looked at it from the employee standpoint, and I think that because they weren't feeling it, there was a trend of quiet quitting. I think earlier this year, or it was late last year, either late 2025 or early this year, there was this whole thing about quiet laying off, right? Or quiet firing, if you wanted to call that. How do you think that is actually contributing to the organizational or social psychological support or safety in this sense?
Actually, well put it, is talking about quiet quitting, which we well known about it. But now there's the effect of quiet cutting. And I think
the quiet cutting, that's right.
Yeah, it's predominantly increased after the COVID as well. And it is actually, it reflects deeper issues related to trust, engagement, and psychological safety. I'm, again, circling back to the psychological safety aspect. When employees feel uncertain, unsupported, or undervalued, they tend to disconnect emotionally, as I previously mentioned. And the consequences is affecting productivity and the overall organization morale and stability. But from an organizational psychological perspective, people perform best when they feel safe, valued, and supported. And uncertainty is one of the biggest sources of stress. So when employees are feeling insecure about their roles or the future, it activates a constant state of vigilance, affecting not only their cognitive functioning, but also including the risk perception, attention, and decision making. And when individuals are mentally preoccupied, fatigued, or disengaged, the likelihood of errors and safety incidents increases.
So what you're saying is that if I'm not feeling great today, and I don't feel safe bringing up certain things to, let's say, my supervisor. Again, this goes across different industries. And when we talk about occupational safety and health, it could be both indoor and outdoor work, field work, or even office work.
Yeah.
You're saying that the risk actually increases. How so?
Okay, so if organizations are not going to have these transparent conversations, right? Because if I'm going to feel it that, I'm not going to be supported if I'm going to say I'm feeling stressed, or I'm feeling triggered with a certain situation which I'm facing on board or on the job, that's going to affect to a risk. And how much we put safety awareness, or we have our tabletop exercises to ensure that this is a safety measure, this is how we do it, eventually it fails because the individual himself is not able to perform any further because there's no transparent communication here. If you want to really grow and hold an organization to go further, you need to ask beyond, how are you doing coping today? Oh, you're not well. You know what? Take a break. And people can feel it when you're genuine or you're not being genuine. Yeah. And this will help to build the trust and allow them to speak up more. And actually that will be, it's an incentive, because they will perform better and you will be able to guide them further. Yeah.
Okay. I see. And so again, back to what we're looking for in occupational safety and health, from that aspect of things, by creating that psychological safety, we reduce the risk, thereby I would say possibly reducing the rate of accidents, increasing productivity. I think it does have a direct correlation in that sense, right?
Definitely, because if we're always talking about safety risk and eliminating them, zero risk, zero accidents, but for the zero to occur in terms of accidents, psychological safety is very important. Psychological health or psychological resilience should be present. It's not only about safety. That's why psychological and physical safety comes hand in hand. And every organization should be well aware on this.
Okay. At the very beginning of this podcast, you were saying that the awareness among leaders, organizations, and even down to the ground level, the awareness has gone through the roof. It's definitely shot up. Now, I also want to understand that when we stand in front of the elephant, we can't see the elephant. So what is it that we're overlooking, in your opinion, that needs to be addressed?
One thing which we are overlooking is, okay, now that awareness is there, but how to tackle the situation may not be there. And how to be ensuring that, if these situations are brought up, how you're going to tackle it. And apart from the resources. So we talking about, okay, you know what, you can come to us, but are the resources provided to them and say that, hey, there's more avenues for you to look at. And one common blind spot, which we are assuming is policies are enough. Actually, policies alone are not enough because policies are important, but leaders need the skills and confidence to implement them effectively. And I will also say that another blind spot here will be focuses on crisis response rather than prevention. Always they're talking about, let's respond to what has happened. But did we talk about the prevention? And that's why we're trying to, encourage and say, let's have the prevention measure in place. And psychological distress often develops gradually. It's not like overnight, It's a development of a gradual effect. And early recognition and support can prevent the escalation and strengthen the resilience. And organizations also sometimes overlook the importance of signposting available support resources. Where help exists, employees may not know where to learn or hesitate to seek help because they may not know, this is where, what is the actual, I will say that, you can call this or there's this number, but exactly who and what am I going to look out for? And in Singapore, there's actually strong national resources as well. For example, the National Mind Line 1771, they provide 24-hour emotional support for and it's a confidential support as well. So even organizations can say that, beyond talking to us and you need further support because maybe the trust we are not having much and maybe the employee just scared no matter what the trust culture and the organization is trying to create, you can even call Mindline to get support because they got 3 platforms like telephone, mobile messaging and online website as well. Yeah, and of course, just to add on, joining the OSHA. Yeah.
You're going to be there, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great. So make sure that you see the Singapore Red Cross Academy over at OSHA this year. All right. So that being said, thanks for bringing that up in the areas of overlook. So again, awareness is there, but the action, the skill, the capacity is still something that needs to be leveled up at this point. And I mean, you touched on the topic of resources, which is something that I think as an individual, I'd be wondering, okay, my company has these things, so on and so forth. Yes, the government has the Mind Line. In fact, I didn't even know about the Mind Line, until you brought it up. So the government is doing something as well. Now, because we are reaching a regional audience, we're very lucky that the government does this in the Mind Line and all that. But the thing is, as a Singaporean, I find that sometimes we are so lucky that we have so much resource, I don't know where to start. Now, I think that like what you brought up, business leaders, organizational leaders, HR leaders can start to implement that and say, hey, there's the Mind Line in case you forget anything else. It's like, if there's a fire or whatever, people still call 999.
Yeah,
they forget 995, right?
Indeed.
So it's in that sense, call the Mind Line if if all else fails or you don't remember. But for HR leaders specifically, maybe in this area of psychosocial safety and support, what are the resources that you think that you would point them to as a good start to maybe develop their internal policies?
Right. I would definitely point them to, not because of the Singapore Red Cross Academy, but I'll definitely, link them back to Singapore Red Cross and the Academy. Because Singapore Red Cross Academy, not only we look into the policies of, what is happening and how to get our courses, in place, but apart from that, we have the courses created at Singapore Red Cross Academy to give the right training to the HR team or HR leaders or even the organizational leaders. And that's when the whole support of these courses and trainings have been curated. And it's truly and customized for the organizations. So many times, people will say, I'm from the safety aspect, I'm from the teaching aspect, but our programs are created for that. And that a lot of it talks about psychosocial resilience and about the education behind what is essential for an organization to run. And because leaders, they are well off in, making sure the organization to run stably, but there's certain aspect of maybe this aspect is they need some training as well. I mean, why not? Why be afraid to say, and let the leaders also go on board. And Singapore Red Cross Academy is there for you to conduct the trainings for you, not only trainings, but talks or courses or even certain leadership programs for you to venture in. Yeah. And for that, you can be, looking into redcross.sg or Singapore Red Cross Academy website to learn more about our courses. Or if you feel that, I want to be actually linking directly with you, why not? cprhs@redcross.sg, and our team will respond to you shortly.
Okay. And apart from that, you've got the Singapore Red Cross Academy that's there. What do you think the common practices are? I would say HR leaders would then be looking to develop their policies. So, what are the normal first steps that they could be looking into?
I think the first step for every HR leader to be doing here will be to ensure that there's a mental health handling policy there. That means, we have the P files, we have the staff files, we have a record of the staff performances. We're talking about appraisal, we're talking about, employee development exercises, but do we have a policy to talk about? We talk about SOPs, right? The standard operating procedures all the time. But is there a SOP on handling mental health cases if brought up? And if I say the word stress, do you quickly put out the person, yeah, I'm feeling the same stress? Or you're able to link them and say that, take them seriously. So a policy on ensuring that the mental health component is already elevated or included is something every HR leader should be looking at.
Oh, okay. That's a great pro tip over there for all the HR leaders listening. So thanks so much for sharing all of that. So what I love to do is for you to maybe, this camera is yours, let people know how they can get connected with you as well as the Singapore Red Cross Academy.
All right, thank you. So do visit us at redcross.sg or Singapore Red Cross Academy and look up for the courses under psychosocial resilience and humanitarian studies. Our course or full course informations are there, or feel free to drop us an email at cprhs@redcross.sg and our team will respond to you as soon as possible. Thank you.
All right. So thanks so much, Durga, for joining us on the OSH Insights podcast and sharing your OSH Insights with us.
Thank you, Edric, for having me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this episode of the OSH Insights podcast. Now, you've heard from Durga from the Singapore Red Cross Academy about what works and what might not be working in the workforce right now. All right, the importance of mental health and implementing the right policies in your organizations to provide your workers and your staff with the right psychosocial support, and even tapping onto government helplines to add into your own policies. So much was covered in this episode, and I truly hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. That being said, give us your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast. And please remember to also check out osha-singapore.com to see what's happening in the world of occupational safety and health in Asia. That being said, my name is Edric, and I'll see you in the next episode of OSH Insights.